Hello, the purpose of today's lesson is to discuss how to fit patterns and a beginning lesson on grading patterns and understanding grade rules. So, by the end of the class today, you'll be able to comprehend pattern ease, calculate grade rules, and use the program to draft lines, move, add, and delete points, as well as create darts, label patterns, and then be able to use marking tools in Tukatech. The recordings that correspond with our class today are a 1-inch pattern grade, a 2-inch pattern grade, a recording on lines, recording on points, recording on pattern labeling, and recording on marking tools. You'll be able to refer to these recordings at any time during our course. So today I'm going to move into talking about fitting ease. Whenever you're creating a pattern block, you have enough room for a person to move. So this is not design ease or as a designer intends, but rather it's just to be able to move, walk, and sit in a garment. So for a skirt or the lower torso pattern that we're creating, the first step is to measure the bottom torso at the waist and the full hip. So you will be doing this on Thursday for your dress form. But for today, I'm going to just focus on the pattern. So if we were to measure the pattern and we were to compare it to the form, there should be a 1/2 inch difference. So for example, if I were to measure a dress form and the waist measured 26.5 inches, then the pattern should be 1/2 inch larger, or 27 inches. For the hip, it's 3 inches because again, we're moving, we're sitting, we're squatting, and so you need more room at the hip. So if I were to measure the dress form at the full hip, which is 8 inches below the waist, it would measure, say, 34 inches. So 34 inches on the form, then if you went to measure the pattern, it should be 3 inches larger, or 37 inches. Now this is referring to a full circumference and not just the front or the back, but it's the front and back combined and the full measurement for the waist and for the hip. Notice that when you measure the hip, it's at the fullest part of the body, so it's the buttocks. So it's not up high where we like to measure, but it's a full 8 inches down from the waist. So it is the fullest part of your body. Now, the points that you'll actually be moving are going to be at the waist and at the hip, and then we will need to smooth out the hem. So you want to have grade points at the waist and the hip. So you recall that a grade point is where you have two separate lines. So if I put a grade point at my waist side seam, the side seam is going to be a separate line, not a bendy line, but two separate lines between the two. If I put a grade point at the hip, the point or the line that's above this point will be a separate line than the line below the point. So again, understand grade points. And again, we're going to move at the side waist, not the center front or the center back, but at the side only for the waist and at the full hip. So your steps to do this is to measure the front and the back waist on a pattern. So we're going to review what you did last time and measure the front and back waist along the silhouette. And then you're going to take that measurement and you're going to subtract 1/2 inch and calculate the waist measurement. So that would be the measurement of what it should be on the dress form. Then you're going to take a point 8 inches down from the waist along the side seam, and you're going to measure both the front and the back. Calculate your measurement chart so that it adds up for you. Subtract 3 inches from that measurement on the measurement chart, and that will be the hip measurement or the corresponding hip measurement on the dress form. So we want to generate a measurement report, save it as Excel, and write the correct pattern measurement on the measurement report. So we should have 2 measurements, one for the pattern itself and one for what the dress form should actually measure. Now I'm going to go into Tüketech and show you again a review of measurements. Okay, here we are back in Tüketech, and this is a basic block that you received last time with the skirt patterns and the bodice and the sleeve. And today, as well as next week, we're only working with the skirt pattern. So the first thing that we're going to do is remeasure. And just as a review, we're going to double click on this point. We're going to give it a name, and we're going to measure it, name it waist. It is a grade point, and so it's not a curve. And then we're going to tell it to measure to the next grade point. I'm going to say apply and OK. Then I'm going to come to my side seam. I'm going to double click on the side seam here. Sorry, I want to add a point. So I'm going to come to the left icon, add a point. I want it to be a grade point, and it is on a slight curve, so I'm going to leave it as a curve. And remember that the program thinks in a clockwise direction from that point. So from this point, it's thinking clockwise. And I want to type in 8 and click on OK. So here's my 8 inches. Now I'm going to right mouse click, do the select tool, use the draft tool, and again I'm going to take my point and say from point here and click on OK because it's attached to the point. I do want a point connection, so I'm going to click on yes, and I'll click anywhere on that front or the center back. Then, as you recall, we select from point, X being a horizontal line. We don't want it to move because we want that to be a perpendicular line to the side seam. Select 0 and click on OK and yes. Now, just again as a review, we want to double click on this point, give it a measurement, and then click on apply. And because it's an internal line, we do not need to do the slash and M. We can go ahead and click on apply. I'm going to quickly do the same to the front. Now that I have my points and lines measured, I can go to my report and I can report my measurements. And so I'm going to click on report, go to measurements, and I'm going to go to my measurements, and you'll see that it says it's 39.492 inches. So it's slightly under a half of an inch. And as you recall, I said it needed to be 3 inches less. So 39.492 minus 3 means that this is a going to fit a person whose hip is 36.492 or almost 36 and a half. Now the waist is supposed to be a half inch smaller. So the waist, if I take 27.618 minus zero point 0.5, I'm going to get 26.118. And so again, it is almost 27 inches for the waist. And I'm going to click on Excel, and I can launch Excel or again save it. Good idea to save this to your folder. Once you have your measurements open in Excel, then what you do is open the Excel document, add a column and next to total, and call it dress form measurement. And so for the hip and for the waist, you should have the corresponding measurements. So again, what it should be for the hip in this example would be 36.492, and the waist should be 27.118. This concludes measuring.